In this episode of Common SENSimilla, we'll be talking to another person in a long line of guests whose opinions on cannabis consumption drastically changed as a result of some familial challenges. You know, I love a good crossroads story. Our guest today saw the long-term play of creating a consistent, high-quality solution for cannabis products, similar to what the food industry had been doing for dozens of years. Jack Grover, co-founder and CEO of Grove Bags. Welcome to Common SENSimilla. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's quite a privilege to be one of the speakers here. I've honestly gotten to this show a couple times in the past because we've had some really great guests. So kind of funny how I'm here. I guess you need some filler content for the end of the season, but here we are.
This is it. You're taking place for all the actual people I wanted to talk to who canceled. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
That's usually how it goes for me.
No, I've been excited to talk to you. I've been aware of your company for maybe the entire time you've been a company. We've crossed paths at many of the trade shows throughout the years. So no, I'm thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I know how busy you are. I know you're selling lots of units, buddy. Let's go.
Thankfully we are. Yeah. I mean, it's another good, harvest season for us. I think we're seeing some encouraging rebounding and stabilization in the market across, the US, and certainly some really exciting activity, overseas and kind of the global industry and global community, which, we're privileged to see now. I mean, more than a quarter of the world's countries have some sort of medical or recreational cannabis program. So it's a very exciting time to be in the industry. I think, really those of us who, are closing the books in this year and getting ready for next year, I think it's been a challenging year. But I remain optimistic and energized as ever.
Well, you're a Cleveland Browns fan, I see behind you, and without poking too much fun, you must be optimistic. You must have that optimistic bone deep in your body because you remain a fan of, I don't know, buddy, not one of the best. I'm no sports fan, but they're not the greatest, but way to stay optimistic. I love it.
You know what I tell people when they give me a hard time for being a Cleveland sports fan? Well,
I'm not giving you a hard time. I don't know shit about sports.
You know what I tell them? I tell them, that's how you know I'm a real dude, because I grew up in Cleveland. I'm still a Cleveland sports fan. Yeah, I don't trust people who aren't fans of their hometown teams who don't have old friends.
There you go. Totally. Listen, I lived in New York for a long time, and Mets fans are similar. They will never give up. They will never, ever give up. Same with Knicks fans. They never give up. All right. So I have maybe the most obvious question. And if this is a hacky question, you can throw a tomato at me. But the most obvious question to me, Jack Grover, Grove Bags. Why not Grover Bags? What did you lose in giving up that extra R? How did your emotions get torn out during the inception and branding of your company? Why not Grover Bags?
I did not like the name Grove Bags. I did not like the name Grover Bags. On the one hand, I understand as an entrepreneur, people feel like, oh, if I put my name on it, I cannot emotionally tolerate it. There's no way I can let it fail. And, I get that. I've had some hard days building a business. I think, the team here, my brothers and sisters in arms and, everybody in arms here would agree with that. But I think more than that, we had a product and we didn't have a name, and MJ BizCon was coming up. And, my friend Jordan Sellers said to me, hey, I like the way Grove Bag sounds. Grove kind of has a cool ring to it, and everything else is bags for products from a grove. It's a grove, everybody at the company will be Grovers, why not? And,
I love that.
It was the best option on the table. So we went forward with it.
I love it. It's like your Swifties.
Sort of. I mean, in reality, what's happened here is we developed a really great product, and we've had to build a good business around it to rise to the quality of product we developed and rise to the needs of our customers and the people who rely on us. And I think that's reflective in our story with the name.
Cool. I can't wait to hear more about it. I thought that was interesting. Why not just go with the name? But I actually kind of like that story better than had you just gone with Grover Bags. That's way better.
Oh yeah.
Your Grovers over there. That's cool. We don't have Reeds over here. It doesn't have the same sort of ring to it as Grovers. I like that. Can you take me to collegiate pre-business Jack? What was that guy about? What did he think it was in store for his life?
I don't think there was ever a pre-business Jack. I've certainly been, I've been buying stocks and trying to, make money since I was 12. I think, growing up the way I did and, seeing what I did with my brother and everything, I certainly, always worked hard and always, wanted to be an entrepreneur and be a businessman. I thought that was, a good way to have agency and control in your life. And, you want to impact causes that are important to you. You want to take care of the people that are important to you. You want to provide opportunities with people you care about, that was how you do it. So I think that had always been the dream, right? I think, obviously there's a lot of dark nights, in between, having the dream and going for it. But that was always the dream. I was interested in stocks, worked at some startups, worked in the financial markets for a little bit, worked at some, tech companies, got a lot of great experiences and great exposure, and worked with some amazing people. I think for me, I enjoyed smoking pot. It brought me a lot of value in my life as a therapeutic and a medicinal. It greatly it's impacted my brother's quality of life. And this might be a bit of a barbaric view, but I feel like in the U.S., we vote with our wallets, and we vote with how we place our time. And I thought this was an important industry, and I thought maybe we could add value to it. And I think it's every 24-year-old stoner's dream to be able to start a business with a product that people who you admire love, and they want to hang out with you and talk with you about it. Like I mean that was the dream, right? We were but we were not adults when we started the business in every sense of the term. I think we had a lot of growing to do in terms of maturing as business people, and I think we also had a lot of growing to do as the industry growed and the company growed.
You said something really interesting that gave me pause, which is something I totally align with, and I didn't understand or even figure out, because I'm kind of a late bloomer entrepreneur. I didn't start any company until I was in my mid 30s. And I didn't figure, so you just mentioned like having agency over your own life was an important thing to you. And I'm curious, when you feel like that became something you were conscious of. Like for me, I think I always knew I was a bad employee. I knew I had brains. I knew I had ambition. I knew I had all these things, but I was, and we talk about it often on the podcast, which is like a sense of entrepreneurial arrogance where like you think you can do these things better than your boss generally, right? So that was kind of me, and I didn't understand the importance of autonomy, of having agency over my own life until it was kind of, I don't even know, it just like hit me over the head like a hammer. So I'm curious if you have any kind of hindsight on that feeling, and like was there a particular instance where you're like, oh, I need to be my own dude?
Yeah, this is going to sound cheesy, but like, yeah, honestly, I was, probably 6 or 7 years old, and hanging out with my twin sister, who is my best friend and biggest advocate and biggest supporter. So we're obviously very close, but always have been. So we're 6 or 7 years old watching this movie, and we are watching the movie, I think Annie, about the orphan, with Daddy Warbucks and everything.
Sure.
And he is taking her through his house, and she's looking at this guy's mansion and everything, and being like, "Oh, you must have this incredible life. What made you want to be this person?" He's like, "Well, when I was very young, my brother had polio, and he died because my parents couldn't afford medicine. And I decided that day that I'd be, I would be a consequential man one day." And I think we always see things in film and media and music and art, especially art. I would say movies, especially from that area, really are art that we really resonate with, right? And I think for me, just seeing how hard my dad worked, how hard my mom worked, how scared my parents were about my brother and him being okay, and being worried about him going to the state facility, which really terrible. And we could have a whole conversation about public health, and I'm sure a lot of conversations, but we won't get into that right now. But I grew up with a lot of fear and a lot of pressure, and I watched that, and I think people don't realize what kids see and what kids recognize, and the way that their worldview is shaped. But
that's crazy that you made that correlation. I mean,
presumably
you were a really smart kid.
I identified with that. I guess
that's
I could say that. Yeah, like I identified with that. So I think I've always been been scared or driven or from that or insecure,
Totally.
whatever you want to call it. But I identified with that. So I think
Well,
I've always been
fear
driven.
is like a huge motivating factor for humans, but like entrepreneurs in general. For me, it was a fear, you know, a fear of maybe stagnancy, like living in, going to a job I hated, or simply not being able to pay my, losing a job and then not being able to pay my bills all of a sudden and having to figure that out. Like whatever the fear is, like it's a motivating thing. So okay, so can we talk about your brother Charlie a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
You were 6 years old sitting with your twin sister watching this, this this movie about, and Daddy Warbucks is talking about his brother who has polio and his fear that his brother would not be taken care of. So
Well, no, his
can you
brother wasn't taken care of, right? Because he's talking about, in this movie, so he's leading her in this house up this
right,
grand staircase with, butlers and everything. It's this
yeah,
dramatic scene, right?
it's a hard knock
And
life.
yeah, and he's, walking through there in this dramatic scene. She's like, well, how did you decide to, when did you decide to be who you are? He said, well, my brother, when I was very young, died of polio because my parents couldn't afford
Right, right.
medicine. And, I looked at the world and I said, I'm going to be a consequential man.
And did you share this fear? Like, did you think your parents wouldn't be able to afford to take care of your brother?
Um, I don't know. I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you always have fear. Things change, circumstances change. I think, and my dad, I'm very proud of him. I love him. He's an incredible father, and he's also a successful man. I think a lot of his success, came later in life. I think there were a lot of years of a lot of pressure. And my parents are incredible people. I mean, to stay married when you have a disabled child is, statistically, an extreme anomaly. But yeah, despite all that, yeah, I was still afraid, had fear.
Yeah.
I think the fear is, if we don't take, if if I don't, I don't make sure, I'm able to take care of, these people who will.
Yeah. No, I mean, valid. Nobody, right? And
Yeah.
and and again, what an incredible just thing for a 6-year-old to take away and not only understand but contextualize to his own life. Like you were able to, I mean, you applied that. You're like, oh, this is, I understand
I
this.
related to it, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's, that is the most, important thing in, any art form. That's the true value of art. Can I look at something? Can I see something? Can I feel empathy? Can I relate? Can I feel like it applies to my own life, right?
Yeah.
And
No, absolutely.
for me, 6, 7 years old, watching that movie, that little scene, for sure did. I think it always had that burning idea in me since then.
That's amazing. So your brother Charlie has some severe medical issues. I've heard you on podcasts before basically say that your brother was a poster boy for the pharmaceutical industry. He's on a cornucopia of medicines for him to deal with some of these issues. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe like um just witnessing that experience and how that kind of
Yeah.
maybe shaped your direction a little bit?
I mean, full stop. I don't think it's a controversial or lightning rod statement to say that the pharmaceutical and medical industry in this country is structured and incentivized and focused on extracting maximum value, despite
Of course.
whatever human suffering costs. And I
Yeah.
think I saw, growing up with my brother being on all sorts of different medicines, I certainly saw that. And, he certainly still on medication now, but he gets a tremendous amount of relief from cannabis and, a lot more clarity and a lot more enjoyment out of his day. And, that made me angry when I first saw it because I grew up with all this, really strong anti-cannabis rhetoric, a lot of which, buy into and then kind of see the way it affects my brother and see what alcohol is doing to people, see what, heroin, some of these dirty, cheap, nasty drugs, real drugs are doing
Yeah.
to people. And, it gave me, a strong thing. I'm a patient as well. I consume cannabis, I do it almost every day. I think I contribute highly to society while doing it. But that's, all aside, I think, where I was is, I'd grown, cannabis for my brother. I had noticed problems with doing it. I thought maybe they'd be broad problems in the industry. I was at a point in my career where I'd been really lucky with, where I'd been in some cases, and I had some resources to really leverage up. And I didn't have anyone, dependent on me directly at the time, and saw what was going on in cannabis, and kind of had my suspicions about, standard operating procedures and materials use and whatnot in the cannabis industry. And wanted to do it, but I think why wouldn't I do it? I think anybody in that situation who felt I did, about
Well,
cannabis,
let's talk about that.
would do that, right?
100%. I mean, absolutely. I think a lot of us are at the age now, too, where if it's not, our siblings who maybe were impacted by it, it's our aging parents for sure, and like trying to figure out, like, listen, this is going to be beneficial to you as well. So I'm always interested to hear about this crossroads, because I've also heard you talk about growing up. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but anti-cannabis, maybe not a participant until it actually knocked on your front door. So, a lot of times in these conversations, we talk about the DARE program, and where people fall on that spectrum. I was on one end trying to figure out how to break open the box of drugs, and some people are proud graduates. You grew up wrestling in Ohio, which I think is akin to growing up skiing in Vermont. Like, everybody's wrestling in Ohio. So I imagine you're training hard. You seem like you are probably a good student, focused at the very
I
least.
was a terrible student.
Well, you are very least focused. I get that from you. So talk to me about, like, your feelings on cannabis, and then that anger of maybe figuring out that it was not all entirely true.
I mean, I think that, kind of don't want to talk about like the seminal aha moment, there's very few seminal aha moments in the whole thing, right? I think
Yeah.
it's, it takes years of long days and hard nights and,
Sure.
to do anything of meaning. But I think in terms of that seminal moment, I was home from, I don't know where, maybe studying abroad or something. I was, not quite in college. And no, I was younger than that, but yeah, I was younger than that. And Charlie, was like, hey, well, out to California and try some medical cannabis. It really helps me. Can your buddies get some for me? So call around and get some. So mom's like, go ahead and do that. And I'm pretty confused by it. And
your mom is saying it's okay.
Yeah,
Jack, go get weed for your brother.
Yeah, it's shocking. One of my buddies comes by, with a rolled joint of some horrible, brick weed.
Sure.
Rolls this shit up and gives it to my brother. Lights it for him, gets it going for him. He takes a couple puffs, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, I've seen him take so many medications and everything, and just be so uncomfortable. I think that's the word for it. Just being uncomfortable, just sitting there and being physically uncomfortable, because your body is, a prison, right? And I saw his shoulders roll back and kind of the vascularity recede from his face, and he kind of his chest opened up and kind of sat back in his chair a little bit. And I could just tell he was saying in his chair, it was just kind of comfort. His muscles weren't spasming and stuff, and he was just comfortable and able to kind of just sit there and enjoy a moment with me. And I think a lot of beliefs about cannabis and the drug war and all that stuff were shattered. And I think a lot of arguments that I had dismissed for a long time around it suddenly had a tremendous amount of weight. And I think there was a combination of, feeling foolish for allowing yourself to be misled and feeling angry for being misled, right?
What was your mom's, I mean, she obviously,
I think she was a mom who loved her child, and I think she had some really strong opinions about it. But I think her child, came and said to her, like, hey, this really helped me. And I think, like, any good mother, I think she wanted to, ease the difficulty for her child.
It's an unbelievable story, and one that's unfortunately not entirely uncommon, especially in these conversations. Like, there's so many things that end up motivating someone to become an entrepreneur, and specifically an entrepreneur in this space. And sometimes it's these like super, super personal experience. It's less like I love weed and more like this is the impact that this has had on me and the people around me. So you had
And
this
I mean,
revelation.
I think that's a
Yeah,
beautiful thing, though, and an important thing, if I might interject, Will, because
absolutely.
I think the difficulty of getting to this point in the legislative reform process on a state by state municipal basis, and also, towards where we are on a federal basis, has taken a lot of passionate people and a lot of activists and a lot of people with endless amounts of energy. And I think the only way that these people have had this fervent belief and this endless amounts of energy to go out and get these monumental things done over the past few years and decades before that is because they had experiences like mine. And, I think they saw something with their own eyes, and, it gave them a deep reservoir of energy to go out and enact some level of change. So I'm thankful that other people have had the experience, because that's the only way we're here where we are now, with much broader access to plant medicine in this country, and a great dialogue in this country about other types of alternative medicine as well. We're experimenting and investing heavily in psychedelic therapies, different psilocybin therapies, ketamine clinics, although they're in their infancy and have the regulatory issues, I think are a major step forward as well. So I applaud everyone who's had that experience and, has, created an industry and a movement from it.
Where were you professionally during this sea change?
So I was 2014 working for did a bank for a little bit, didn't love that. Worked at Star for a little bit, really didn't like that. I think I learned a lot of what not to do. It was a guy who he was a bad leader, bad manager, and I think I learned a lot of what not to do. So it was actually in a lot of ways one of the most valuable, quick little professional stints I've had. And then I worked with a company in Chicago and New York that was a food ordering app. Did really well there and built a lot of my professional confidence there. And then it's, around 2016, see everything happening in cannabis, kind of getting bored at this job and thinking, well, if I'm ever going to, try something, it's going to be now. And, I think there's this problem in cannabis. And I think there's, a way to create a lot of commercial value and a lot of value for people who are patients and beneficiaries of the plant and the people that are operators. And I think we've got an explosive industry here with a big compounded annualized growth rate. And we've finally got, attitudes broadly changed in the U.S. And I booked a flight out to Colorado, and I went to a dispensary, and I looked at the packaging they were using, and I bought some flour. And I went home and, back to the hotel or Airbnb or whatever. And I opened it up the next morning, and it totally dried out. It was burned, and realized I was definitely onto something. So got back and quit my job and got a little spot in the WeWork and got to work.
It was that simple. Like, you went to
It was that
Colorado.
simple. I
Okay,
was
so
like, yeah, I'm
take
right.
me to
There's a
the week.
problem. Yeah, I'm right. There's a problem here. Let's do this.
Take me to that week prior to your trip in Colorado. So, like, because by the way, this is almost exactly my story. I'm sitting in my office trying to solve a problem that I see coming, working at a job that has nothing to do with the things that are interesting me. And I also took a trip out to Colorado to check it out, and also went to probably that same dispensary, and also got that same crappy packaging, and also had all those same experiences. The problem I wanted to solve was slightly different than the one you wanted to solve. So I want to get to two things. Take me to that week prior to going Colorado, when if you're like me, you're sitting you're sitting at your desk, and you're maybe like 15% focused on whatever you're supposed to be doing, and the rest of you is like starting a
Daydreaming and
company.
fantasizing. And
Yeah.
I think I was doing so well at this particular place, I didn't want to leave, and certainly had a lot of buy-in. But I think bad managers and bad leaders and toxic coworkers don't get the credit that they deserve. I think most people,
In terms of motivated, what do you mean? What do you mean?
in terms of motivated to make a change, because
Yeah,
I think
you're like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
most people don't make the move to quit a job or make a big change until the environment is so shitty, or they're so uninspired and so deflated by the people they're around that they leave. And thank God for those toxic, shitty people, because I think they drive a lot of people to make decisions. I think if I hadn't had that person at the situation I was in, probably wouldn't have felt probably wouldn't have been compelled to do this. But the timing was great, and I thank them for treating me horribly, because it pushed me into a
What a
great
good
direction
perspective
for
on
me.
it. Yeah, what a good perspective on it, because I mean I align with that, and you're like, you know, it's not enough sometimes for there just to be a problem to solve. Like sometimes the whole stew needs to be like bubbling. Do you know what I mean? Like there has to be those shitty employees or whatever management who's like, you gotta like hate something about going into your job every day. There has to be some complacency. There has to be some recognition of fear. Like,
There
okay,
has to
like
be a
I'm getting a
moment where
good,
there has to be a moment where you say fuck this,
okay.
and you take that energy and you pour it into what made you say fuck this.
What was that moment for you?
I'm out of here. It was just a really nasty comment.
Yeah,
And not that it was an unusually nasty comment, not that it was the first nasty comment, but
but it was
it
the
was
one.
just it was just like, hey, you know what? I just got my commission check, and you know, I've vested and done everything else here. Fuck this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
you
Well,
know what?
complacency.
I would rather, you know, fail on my own and, you know, go back home with my tail between my legs, or, you know, go get another job, because, you know, I'm the type of guy, I can make a decent living on the phone. I can do that. You know, I
Yeah,
can bring energy through a phone call. And I was just
yeah,
like, hey, you know what? If I fuck up horribly, I'm not going to be that far behind here, you know.
totally.
But I can't do this for another day.
I love that, because I feel really aligned with that. And, you know, I don't think I really dealt too much with toxicity. Like maybe I was self-inflicting toxicity by knowing, you know, that eventually a decision would be made by either me or the universe. You know what I mean? One way or the other. So that's, but again, that's that fear of complacency, that fear of a consistent paycheck, that fear of losing healthcare or whatever. Like they're such anchors, man. And I love hearing about that moment when you're like, fuck the anchor. Consistent paycheck. Who cares? Like, well, most people, right? Um, that's cool. So you have that moment, that like, okay, I'm out moment. What First of all, why packaging? So like you told me about going to Colorado and all that, but like, was that something you had experience in? Did you know anything about packaging?
So my dad and grandfather had a packaging business that they built up and sold off, and it was a general packaging and tape, you know, distribution business, cardboard, peanuts, and all over that. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew I had a suspicion this industry would need dedicated vendors with dedicated, you know, product types to really maximize operational efficiency in this industry. And I think one of our big advantages that we've had as a business is we've always kind of looked at where we thought cannabis was going instead of where it was, because I think we've seen a lot of blip flash in the pan companies who have focused, you know, where's the industry right now instead of where it's going. And I think for us, the
Yeah,
industry was
especially
always
in
going,
packaging.
yeah. And I think you look at flexible packaging, and I think, you know, for us, all consumable items go into a piece of flexible packaging. To us, cannabis is not a novelty item. Doesn't need novelty packaging. It needs packaging that is brandable, that maximizes potency and shelf life. And we kind of were lucky because we had never developed, you know, material rep formulas before, and it was, you know, our first patent and our first formulation. And it took us, you know, a few formulations, but I think what gave us a lot of creative licenses, we were like, okay, we should theoretically be able to do some of these things with passive modified atmospheric packaging. You know, how do we, you know, reverse engineer the packaging around these very specific environmental requirements that we have in this very specific gas mixtures and this very specific, you know, environment, things like, you know, stack charge and the specific gas mixtures and whatnot. And that was certainly about every bit of a 10-month, year-long process. But I think every time we went out and tested the product, even though it was, you know, sometimes financially disastrous, because, you know, ruining a pound of weed back then that you know,
Yeah,
bought with rent money and really needed to, you know,
sure.
flip or whatever, you know, certainly daunting. But I think we learned stuff each time. And, you know, when we were getting the end of it, I think we realized we really had a substantially better way of doing things.
So let's get to the better way of doing things. But right now I want to make sure I understand like the why. And it sounds like it was in your blood. You had packaging in your DNA. Is it really that simple?
I mean, I think looking back at something, it's always that simple, right? Like the days are long and the years are short. I mean, I think a lot of things had to line up, but yeah, I mean, I, you know, had all these factors and, you know, had these, you know, people to leverage in this perspective, and certainly witnessed a problem that was a pervasive problem. So yeah, I jumped in. I was able to, stand on the shoulders of, people who came before me, and kind of take that and be like, hey, this totally new industry. A lot of people don't want to service it right now because of the legal status.
Yep.
I'm gonna go where nobody wants to be.
Were you a slow burn sort of guy? Like, a lot of people in this industry, especially the fly by nights that you mentioned, like come in with dollar signs in their eyes, thinking like this is going to happen, and it's going to happen, in under 18 months. So,
I mean, I had a certain amount of I think we had a certain amount of naivety, or we were naive. We were naive. We were ignorant to what we didn't know. But no, I don't think we were ever, Chad, Brad, and Thad thinking we could come in, create no actual value, rape some investors, create some sort of, tech PE play in a CPG, agribusiness, and then flip that in 6 months for a huge amount of money. I don't think we were those assholes. I think we were people that, cared about cannabis, cared about the people growing it, cared about the people consuming it, cared about the movement, felt we had a really great product. The market validated that we had a really great product. And then we set about building a business that could rise to the occasion. That's what happened here for us. But yeah, it was a slow burn. I mean, the first 2 years we looked like fucking morons. Nobody gave a damn about long-term viability of cannabis. It was on nobody's radar. Nobody even asked the question, what does shelf stability for cannabis look like on a chemical level? Nobody had asked that question because the cannabis was moving so quickly. But what I knew was there inevitably had to be a production glut. And once that production glut happened, suddenly in Oregon in 2018, in the harvest season of 2018, everybody was worried about long-term. Everybody's worried about long-term viability and how do I maintain the integrity of my product and trickle it out to the market over the course of the year. And then boom, all of a sudden, we were doing business, and called my friends, called people who believed in me, called people who I knew would take an unwise risk and come help me out. And for a little while it was 5 or 6 of us around a wood table and a horrible office in a horrible neighborhood with a horrible warehouse in the back. And we made that work. And I still drive by that place sometimes, and I know my partners do. And then we look at that place, and nobody could have done what we did in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we changed the way an industry does things, and we changed the trajectory of our lives at the same time out of that building.
It's awesome. Talk to me about changing the directory of how things are done, because if there's one thing that I can attest to, and just the day-to-day things we do here at CannaPlanners, it's the amount of things that our potential clients don't know could fill several congressional libraries full of stuff. So like educating our clients on simple go-to-market strategies or marketing strategies, or why they still need a website and not a Facebook page or a Weed Maps page, or all of these things are things that we still actively do all these years later to people who are even funded, so it's wild. So can you talk to me a bit about changing mindsets and how you went about educating? Like being a good salesperson is one thing, but being able to educate while selling, like those are two different skills.
I appreciate that. I think we had 2 major competitive advantages that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about. One is I was able to meet and recruit a really excellent salesperson to come and help me at a critical time with the business. And when we finally started to get a spark on the fire, this guy went out and grabbed leaves and firewood and threw them on the fire and made it roar with me. He's still here. His name's Luke, but I think I think that first champion, I think that's critical to any business, because I think the CEO has a lot of latitude of being able to sell. They have the story, they have everything else. I think it's somebody being able to be like, hey, I have this great product, I want you to try it. And that leads me into the second thing. We were in a good position because I could call you and I could say, hey, I have this thing that you're going to be really skeptical about, but I want you to try it out. And I'm going to send you this free thing to try out. I'm going to follow up with you when I send it. I'm going to follow up with you when it's in the mail. I'm going to follow up with you when I know it's delivered. And then I'm going to follow up with you and make sure you try it right. Then I'm going to follow up with you and see how you like it. And because we gave that sample and said, hey, here, try this, and had the luxury of doing that with that business, that opened a lot of conversations, because I think it gave us a good opportunity. Because even before, we could call somebody and say, hey, Will, I've got, I'm in town and I've got 6 of your neighbors I'm talking to about this, and 4 of your neighbors I'm stopping by because they're already customers and they're all using this. And I'm sure you want me to stop by and tell you what I'm doing for them, and, make sure you have the same competitive advantage in delivering your customers, high integrity cannabis as well. That's still, safe and, highly ethical, or has a high efficacy. And, that's really how it started. But it was a very consultative, try this sale. I think we had a lot of legacy operators, a lot of people who were like, this is not how I've seen things done before. I've always known about burping. I've always done things, this way, and I'm not going to try something any different. So having luxury, being able to say, hey, I want to send this to you. I want you to try it side by side. Take a little bit of flour, put it in there with next to whatever you're doing. Give it a week and try it out. I think the fact that actually worked was huge for us, because it made us a low friction introduction. I wasn't calling you and being like, hey, I need you to change all your nutrients, and I don't know anything about growing, and I don't know anything about cannabis. And you're one of you're one of 100 people I'm going to call today about this. It wasn't like that. It was like, hey, this is what we designed. This is why we designed it. This is why I think you'll like it. This is why I want you to try it. Where can I send it?
Yeah.
And I don't think that can be
products.
overlooked.
No, certainly not. So talk to me about kind of proof of concept, go to market. So and again, like re-educating not only business people, but cannabis business people who may have like you said, all I've ever done is burp. You know what I mean? Like, that's all I ever need to do. So talk to me about actually, like, you're sending out all these sample packages. Like, what is the point where Lucas is like, I'm onto something, like we have some steam, we're ready to go?
So the way Luke and I would do it, right, is we would, call you, explain the product. If you were talking about burping or you were talking about anything else, we listen, we've got third-party lab studies on this that say we're saving 40 to 45% more terpenes and cannabinoids versus other packaging methods. Now, let me walk you through the science plan. Let me tell you about our discoveries. Did you know that 90% of your terpenes are hiding out in your trichomes, and your trichomes are highly susceptible to a static charge? You're not using anti-static cultivation packaging and cultivation liners for curing and storage. That's causing serious degradation. Go ahead and open one of your, pounds that you package and stored, and then use our SOP and open it up right next door. You're telling me on the phone that you're such a big grower and you don't have time for this. Well, with what you're telling me, you've got, 1,000 growers. How many guys? Oh, you got 4 guys on your team in your facility whose full-time job it is to burping. One of those guys rather be working on making sure we're putting fire weed into those pounds. Which can we use that manpower and make sure that we're focusing it on, the post harvesting room and making sure we're drying and curing anything properly. So really, it was conversations like that, and starting to get the industry to think about, operational efficiency. Where am I hitting expense points? What am I doing that's non-taxable? Where there's non-protected by 280, where I'm doing something that is protected by 280. And I think that naturally came with the industry, and that naturally came with, more people using the product, and more people, getting fire packs and being like, oh, what's this bag that all these fire packs are coming in?
Yep.
Why is the nose on all these packs so good? How come there's no haze smell? How come these are all so well cured? How come the trichome integrity is so strong on all of these? How come there's such a powerful nose on the plant?
Okay, so I need to know about innovation then for you. So, like, do you have the perfect product?
What's the ragu spaghetti sauce story? There's no perfect product. There's only perfect products. Right? I think we've got, 4 regional formulations for Pepsi in this country that vary differently in sweetness, right? I think that varies. I think we try to build the best product we can for each use case, and we constantly try to iterate and improve on it. I think if you are an innovative product company and you're not constantly trying to out innovate yourself, you are not going to be around for that long. So we're constantly tinkering and trying to update and play with formulas and release new materials. We We're the first company in the world to do a passive modified atmospheric film in a vacuum seal extrusion. So we've got
Pretend I don't know what you're talking about.
So we, vacuum seal bags.
Because I don't. Yes.
Vacuum seal bags for like hunting or,
Yep.
reducing volume of flour for shipping. Not that anybody would ever do that. The problem with that material is it's nylon, right? And the problem with the nylon is the nylon's porous. It has a very intense static charge. It's very doesn't have any sort of ultraviolet light protection. It really doesn't do a whole lot to protect the integrity of the actual plant medicine and cannabis. And what I mean by that is it's not doing anything to protect against all these major pain points of cannabinoid and terpene degradation and loss, or what is really efficacy loss and quality loss, medicinal integrity loss. So that's a new one that we're coming out with. I think we look at the industry and we look at the people we want to serve, and we try to look at their pain points. But for us, if we're not introducing a product that offers a substantially better way of doing things, it's not a product worth offering. And we scrap it or we reiterate on it. We try and improve it. We've got some pretty cool stuff in the pipeline. I think for us, we always look at things in terms of a problem solving aspect. What's the problem? What's the best way to solve the problem? Is it an intentional problem or not intentional problem? Just let me know. I think you have to understand that too. I think I think we were, well poised as a business because I had actually grown flower. So when I was making cannabis packaging, I was, designing the packaging off of what I had seen. The standardized sizes that we see for flexible packaging across flower were the ones that did that. Obviously it was widely copied by the industry. I think it was largely beneficial for the industry because I thought a lot of the bags were, improperly sized for the flower. But it's a lot of different things like that. I think, you can always, I shouldn't say you can always, I would say you're never going to, make a good product if you don't start with, trying to address a problem or, talk to and interact with and get, feedback from the people who you're trying to sell to or whose problem you're trying to solve. And I think we've always operated from that aspect, but we've also operated from the place as well. Hey, we like smoking weed. We want to smoke better weed, and it's pretty cool that the best people in the world are doing this. Like using our bags and want to hang out 100%. With us and show us what they're doing. Like that's the cool stuff, and that's also the spirit of it too, right? Everybody wants to make a living and everybody wants to have a good company, but we want to have a great company that's defined by being a great place to work and by making great products that great people in a great industry can't do what they do without.
I've heard you talk a couple times about, maybe one of the potential benefits of a federal legalization would be, a methodology wherein packaging becomes consistent throughout the country. Can you talk about why that's important?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Just from from us, the consistency and product integrity came from medicinal standpoint. It's not just about a more pleasant smoke. It's really about the medicinal viability of the product. If I'm a medical grower, if I'm a producer of anything, and I'm not able to deliver to my patient or my end user the product the way I envision it, I don't care if you're delivering food or cannabis or bottles of shampoo. It's you're gonna have a problem. So I thought that we would really have an opportunity there to do something that was important because we thought, if cannabis is losing 35 or 40% of its potency, and I'm a medicinal patient, it's a big deal for me financially to go out and purchase my meds. Like, yeah, that person deserves to have the effects from that medicine that they're anticipating and that they're investing in. And we also thought we were doing something great for brands because we thought, hey, there's really no brands in cannabis, and people are only loyal from batch to batch and bag to bag because there's no consistency or product integrity because people are using every which packaging method and nobody's concerned about anything post harvest.
Yep.
Certainly not post dry.
Right.
And certainly don't even get me started on trying to get people to think there's a difference between curing and drying. So these were the things that we thought were important, and we're trying to create value around. So we've always really believed in the entourage effect of the plant, the synergistic properties of different cannabinoids and terpenoids working together for medicinal effects. that was really a driving thing of, hey, this has value because of these things.
Interesting. So here in Vermont, where CannaPlanners is located, the state adopted some pretty serious guidelines on environmental standards. And for some reason, they decided to place those on the burden. They put the burden of that onto a brand new fledgling industry as opposed to food or,
Can you imagine if they regulated food or medicine in this country the way they regulate pot?
No.
It's maddening to say the least. But yeah, no, I mean, we recently believe that you could only do, modified atmospheric films of our sophistication with virgin resins, but we've successfully created 30-40% post-consumer recycled resin content pouches that maintain the same efficacy and technological advantages of TerpLoc while still meeting some of those requirements. But I think, cannabis is up to the challenge. I think a lot of packaging innovation, a lot of, serious clamor around sustainable packaging here in the US, which is consumer driven instead of market driven, like it is in Europe, has been driven by cannabis. And I think that's another broader societal benefit of our industry as we've reinvigorated these conversations around sustainability and supply chains and whatnot across the packaging industry, far beyond cannabis, as the new CPG kid on the block.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, it is kind of, especially in Vermont right now, because we do lots of packaging design at CannaPlanners and work with plenty of manufacturers on sourcing materials. But it's like, when states are at least not consistent in the guidelines they try to adopt, or veer slightly, rather rewrite them entirely, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most challenging things, and I've seen a lot of operators get burned because they're like, "All right, cool, packaging regulations, come on, I'm going to go ahead and buy a year of packaging." Boom, 2 months later, it's rendered non-compliant. They have a major cash flow issue.
Yeah, it's
I mean, which is it's unethical at best. It's for suppliers like ourselves to create programs and structures which allow the flexibility for our customers to operate. But yeah, I mean, no other industry has to deal with stuff like that.
No, none. CannaPlanners is a customer service company that deals in digital marketing for the
I've seen
industry.
some of your guys' designs. You guys have a great graphic designers over there. I've seen some really cool brands that you guys have helped conceptualize.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I imagine that customer service, I imagine you align with the sentiment of customer service. And I'm curious, as you have scaled up, as you continue to scale up, how do you scale customer service? This is something that, this is maybe a lesson you can impart on me. As you're getting responsible for more and more accounts, how do you ensure they all get the love?
I think that's always the question, right? How does customer service scale? How does everyone walk away from your company feeling like they're an important customer?
Yeah.
One, I think it's a cultural thing at your organization. Like, I think you have to take it personally. People say not to take things personally.
Yeah.
I don't think those are people who've done consequential things. I think you have to take your success personally. I think you have to take your team personally. I think you have to take your product personally, because I think that's what it takes to be obsessive. And to really do something that the market deems great, and have an outcome and an uncommon impact and uncommon success.
So regardless of the solution, obsess over it.
Obsess over it, but as we scale, I think we come from that cultural aspect of every customer is important to us because you're doing something important to us, right? You're growing or consuming or dispensing cannabis, or all three.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, right? I think the other thing from that, tangibly, how you service that. I mean, we've had to put in a lot of KPIs. What are average ticket response times? Do people have? Are we easy to get in touch with? If someone has a problem, is it being rectified quickly? Is communication good, or are the communication? Is the communication of expectation being scaled properly across your organization? All of those sorts of things. Responding to a question, saying, "Hey, that's a complicated question. I'll get back to you. I've got to get back to you in a business day or two. I'm just absolutely swamped right now." Or, "Hey, if it's urgent, give me your phone number and tell me when I can call you." I think just trying to be proactive and always coming from that place of I'm trying to manage your expectations. I'm trying to put you in the best position to be successful. I'm appreciative of you buying our product and trying a new way of doing things.
Yeah.
I think if you're always coming from that spot, you'll see where to do it, right. And then I think the other side of this, I think you've got to have good systems. You've got to have something like a Jira or something where your customers can contact you and you're managing support, and you're actually measuring and seeing that I am doing a good job. Nobody wants to, go on Reddit to check how their company's doing and see a bunch of people that were poorly taken care of. No, I want
Yeah.
people going on there being like, hey, I only bought $5 a bag from these people or whatever, but they made sure I had a good experience, or I had a shipping hiccup and they called me and they made it right away. I think that's absolutely critical if you're trying to create a brand that people, you want people to buy into and you want people to swear by. And we are a brand. We're not a commodity product. We are a brand. We think we're the best brand. We think we're the best way and the best system. We think data backs it up, but we are a brand, and we are an entity that people have a relationship with. And I think understanding that is just absolutely critical. But for us, our mantra has always been like, hey, I would rather not make any money on the internet orders today than have somebody be pissed off about the internet order and feel like they came to a bad vendor.
Yeah. How do you impart that on newer employees? Like, how do you make sure that as you scale up and you go from hiring maybe 2 people a year to hiring, I don't know, 20 people a year, whatever it is, like, how do you make sure that you're paying attention to that thing, and that your employees are drinking that Kool-Aid?
You gotta hire for the right values. I would rather make successful business people than hire them. I think if people have the right values and I can sit down with them, they can come in here and I can walk with them through the facility and talk with them about this growth and talk about them with why we do things and what we're trying to achieve here and like what keeps us excited and how this became a business and how this became, a company, where 30 something people working beyond, 5 guys sitting around a table. Like I can work with that, but they have to be able to come in here and they have to understand where the business from and where it's going. I think it's a lot of people use the metaphor of a hotel, like, for a difficult business. And there's a business book, I forget the name of it. This guy's talking about how I went to this hotel in California and, I didn't go back there for years. They remembered how, what temperature I liked the room. And, I went out for dinner and I came back to the room and the bed was turned down. And they were talking like all this stuff. And the way it's done is every day somebody started that hotel, the manager of the hotel sat down with a big book of this is how we do everything. And that's really your culture, right? Like when people talk about culture, or values or this or that or everything, well, what the fuck does any of that mean? Your values or all that. That's the way you do things. That's the way you do business every day.
Yeah.
Don't tell me about the values of your company. Show me how you do business, because that will show me the values of your company. And that will show me the culture of your business. What's my experience like as a customer? That tells me about your values. I don't want to hear your bullshit support, once a year for 30 days about, okay, right. Show me what you do, day in and day out as a business. If that's part of what you are as a business, show me about that in the course of your business. So I think that's important. The culture and the way of how you do things. I think as long as you have people with good values coming into a good culture and a good structure of doing things, I think you will figure out a lot of the rest of it. I know we have.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. I have one last sort of question. Cannabis years are like dog years, so I'm not going to ask you where you see yourself next year, but how do you hope this year ends for you, and what's important to you in Q1?
I think for us this year, I think like a lot of our colleagues industry, I think we want to make sure we're poised to take advantage of next year. So circling the wagons, making sure we're in good communication with the people who rely on our business, our customers, our vendors, our suppliers, our partners, making sure the team is harmonious, making sure absolutely clear heading into next year. Everybody knows what will define a successful year and what will define a successful year for you in the context of the business. I think clarity of expectations, clarity of direction is really critical for our organization and in the year. I'm very excited for MJ BizCon. I'm very excited to get out to a couple of events, some harvest cups, some different things I'm judging, seeing a lot of friends, a lot of people in the industry who I really admire. And that'll be great. But in terms of where I see myself in this business, I don't know where I see, this business. I see this, this business and our products being the flagship way that the global cannabis industry, whether you are a small home grower in South Africa or Israel, or you're a major major production cultivation facility in Puerto Rico or Portugal or Portland, Oregon. TerpLoc is how you cure and store cannabis, because it is the best way to do so. And as far as that, I see the face of our company being the best grower you know. And then I think once we're at that point, then I'll start thinking about the rest of your question.
Sounds good to me, man. I really appreciate it. Jack Grover, you and your team at Grove Bags are revolutionizing the cannabis packaging space. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Can you tell my guests, can you tell my listeners where they can learn more about you and Grove Bags?
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, Bill. Well, I'm sorry, it's great. It was great to be here. I hopefully the audience got something valuable out of my ranting, but I'm pretty easy to reach. JackGroveBags.com. You know, we're very easy to find. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You know, whatever your preferred method of communication is. You know, we're on it.
Find you.
Always happy to talk to you. But yeah, thanks again for you know, having me as a guest today. It's you know, it was a real pleasure. Again, hope your audience enjoyed some of what I had to say.
We'll see. They'll let us know in the comments, Jack. I appreciate you and your time. I've been Will Reed from CannaPlanners. This has been SENSimilla. That's been Jack Grover from Grove Bags. We will see you on the next episode. Thank you guys so much. Peace. Bye-bye.